Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a Tuesday edition of Middays with Q on this 8th of July, 2025. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. 2 hours to play with. We'll take up to 6 o'clock. You can get social with us. Pretty easy to do as we're live on Triax57. Get social with myself and Triax57, Facebook, IG, and X. Log on to Triax57.com. You can follow me on IG and X at Rich Q on Q and TikTok Rich Q on the mic on this. What has turned out to be a hot, sticky, nasty Tuesday up and down the East Coast, Jersey Shore, 95, wherever you're hanging your hat. Try to stay cool. Just surprisingly, just humid, just nasty day. And, you know, this kind of tells you we're in the dog days of summer. I mean, when you start to get to this nonsense, when it's like 93, 92, 91, when it's 85 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning while I'm walking the pooch, not a good place to be. Now, don't get me wrong. Love the beach, love the water, love the heat, love the hot weather. I'm fine. But you do tend to get a little irritable, do we not? Now, I will not be as irritable as many think I will be on this Tuesday, but I will say this. Good show planned. Steve Garner, MLB writer, USA Today Hall of Fame voter, will join me in about 15. Lloyd Vance at 5 o'clock as we mix in NFL, Lloyd's Weekly, Tuesday and Thursday spots. We will dive into what I think is going to be an extremely compelling NFL season. You're starting to hear some leaks come out already with former players, and now they're with other teams, other organizations, other franchises, or maybe they got friends who are players that are no longer with said team. We're going to kind of dive into that. And we had a great conversation yesterday. You guys were unbelievable yesterday. The engagement that you guys were giving us on the air when we were talking about the PEDs and MLB. And then we were even taking it a step further and talking about the Hall of Fame in the NFL and said credentials and what we're looking for. That's something that we're going to talk a little more about later today with Lloyd as well. So as I mentioned, keep us locked in. Busy show on Triax57.com. I believe we are just on the site today. We are not on their Facebook page, but we will reshare this after, and you'll be able to capture us on demand as well. So with that being said, busy show. We'll start a little bit of baseball, a little mixed bag right now. I mean, look, you're looking around the American League, and you have to give a substantial amount of credit. Now, I said before when the Yankees got swept by Toronto, I didn't think Toronto was a very good baseball team. I just didn't. Now they're one of the hottest teams in baseball. They won 9 straight, 9-1 over the last 10. And what they're doing now is just starting to pull away from the Yankees and the Rays and the Boston Red Sox in the AL East. I mean, the Yankees finally get a win. The Yankees, they have struggled so bad. I don't care. You can be a Yankee beat writer. You can be a talking head on Yes. You can be a Yankees play-by-play voice. And if you still believe this team is good, you're the one that's delusional. Like, don't take shots at the fan base. This team stinks right now. I mean, you know, you take 2 out of 3 against a very bad Oakland team. You get swept in 4 by Toronto, and then you lose a Subway Series, and you salvage it by getting a win to close it out. But you lose 2 or 3, and now you got to sit there and you got to take on Seattle, which is not going to be a gimme. So this team's pitching, their defense, their timely hitting, it's been lapse this season. It really has. The Yankees have not played very good baseball. And I'm telling you, you look around baseball right now, you see the moves that the Washington Nationals made. Now, you want to sit there and tell me that that's a move that was a knee-jerk reaction? I think that's an underachieving team. We talked a little bit about this in May. Some of you guys commented in. Is it time now for Washington to pull the plug on Rizzo Martinez? They did that 24, 48 hours ago. Am I going to sit here and suggest on July 8th that the Yankees should considering making a move from Boone? I mean, listen, I'm over it. I'm ready for the change, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. There's that sense of loyalty, which will drive you batty at the end of the day. It will drive you absolutely batty when you talk about loyalty in sports. I don't know why, for the life of me, some ownership group, some general managers, they're so afraid to make a change. So afraid to make a change. And listen, this team right now needs a new voice. They need something to spark them. And again, you talk about some of the issues. I mean, look, you talk about the starting rotation. You also want to get into the bullpen and the relievers. They've had major issues this season. Leiter is one of the culprits. You talk about his 7 outings, his last 7 outings, his ERA is 8.44, 2.44 whip. I mean, it's not going to get it done. His ERA is not that bad. It's not. But again, overall, but it ballooned to 9.9 since I just gave you those numbers. And he's been horrible May 30th through July 4th. The Yankees defense, it's nothing to write home about. And that's not saying a lot because they were publicly blasted last year during the World Series, during the broadcast. They are a poor, fundamentally lack of sound type of defensive team. And we saw last year come home the roost against the Dodgers in the World Series, who, by the way, aren't exactly known for their slick fielding around the diamond as well. I mean, it's just a bad baseball team right now. And I'm telling you, I see you guys chiming in already. We'll get to your comments to start things off in a moment or two. I don't trust this team. I don't like the makeup of the team. And you're wasting guys like Garrett Cole and you're wasting Aaron Judge's prime. You really are. He's putting up monster, ridiculous numbers. He's got 33 home runs already. He's got 33 home runs already. I mean, he's on pace for 66. His career high is 62. It's unbelievable this season. He is the AL MVP. Just give him it right now. His average is 360. His slugging percentage is 734. OPP is 489. He's incredible. He's just an incredible player. But I also need Aaron Judge to do it in late September and October. So there's enough blame to go around for this team. The same could be said with 2 other inconsistent teams that we talk about frequently on the air, and that's Philadelphia Phillies, and that's the New York Mets. And right now, they're trying to jockey for position in the NL East. Phillies are a game up on the Mets in the NL East. And this is a feast or famine type of club, too. I told you this series against the Giants was not going to be easy. So what happens? Again, kiss of death. Here we go. Phillies had the lead. Giants scored 2 in the 8th. They beat them 3-1. I mean, it's almost as though it's like insanity, right? It's the same nonsense happens, I feel, with all 3 of these teams. The same nonsense. And then I throw out there, Sanchez has pitched so well. Sanchez last night was pretty solid. 7 innings. He gave up 7 hits, only 1 run that was earned. He walked 1. He struck out 8. But the pen in the middle relief, they can't hold their own. They can't. They can't hold their own. And that's going to be the Phillies' issue. It's probably going to be the Mets' issue. And we damn well know the Yankees are going to have major issues in that regard as well. So we got a lot of baseball to get into. Steve Gardner in about 5 or so minutes. We'll go around the diamond with him. We'll talk about some of these moves that the Washington Nats have made. Is it a move of desperation? Does it reek of desperation? Or was it, hey, we need a new voice, a change? And which teams are going to be buyers? Which teams are going to be sellers closely to the trade deadline? Now, you already saw that the Yankees are moving Chisholm back to second. And he had that short third base stint. I think the Yankees are going to be a player. I think the Mets are going to be a player. The Phillies are going to be a player. They're going to be buyers. If the Yankees continue to slide like this, the Yankees historically, they're not sellers at the trade deadline. They're doing something to upgrade their team. But there are teams to watch for because Detroit is absolutely running away with the AL Central. Kansas City and Minnesota, they're 14 back respectively. Cleveland, 16 back. Those 3 teams, the White Sox, they're historically bad, along with the Rockies. I just don't know if they have any assets that you would want. So you got 3 teams right there that are going to sell off. The Astros are trying to run away from the Mariners. They're up 6.5. Not yet. NL East, Highly competitive 1-2 with the Phillies and the Mets. And the Marlins, they're 11 back. They're not going to do any damage. You go to the NL Central, same to be said, Chicago and the Brewers back and forth. And you start to see right now the Dodgers, tripping up a little bit, loses a 4 straight, giving San Francisco a little bit of life. I think San Francisco is going to try to go out and get another bat. They might try to go out and get another arm as well, but they're 6 back of the Dodgers in the NL West. So we're going to open it up 4:10 on this Tuesday. We'll get some comments rolling in, and you know what? It's okay to laugh. That's a great handle, by the way. He fires it off today. New York still has the second best odds to win the World Series at plus 700. I do not trust them at all. I don't. You're asking a team to just turn it on at any moment, and they've given me no proof that they can do it. They just haven't. I don't like the makeup of this team. I even said it prior to the season. One of my predictions was I thought the Yankees were going to struggle to not only win a division, but make the playoffs, and I got hammered. The Dodgers are going to be the favorite at this moment to win it all. Now, granted, a week ago, they were in this 8-3 type of run over their last 11, but their odds suggest right now, even the short odds, the Dodgers are the team to beat. A week ago, they were plus 245. As It's Okay to Laugh mentioned, the Yankees at plus 700, they were at plus 600 8 days ago. So now you factor in a couple of those losses, and obviously the odds play in your favor a little more. Detroit has jumped the Phillies at plus 700, and the Phillies sit at plus 800. So out of those teams, Detroit, the pedigree, the resume, the body of work, not sold. The Yankees, not sold. Even though we saw the run last year, and they just imploded in the World Series. Then you got the Phillies, and we know the Phillies have some issues. And I believe, for one, the Phillies are going to be buyers. I believe they are going to be buyers. Expect them to be buyers at the trade deadline. But again, if you think they're going to be aggressive, that's one thing. The offense is just not good enough. It's not good. Listen, you've got big names, right? Sanchez has pitched well. Suarez has pitched well. Zach Wheeler is shown he might be, one of the all-time great acquisitions that this club has ever made in franchise history. Is Zach Wheeler going to go down as the greatest pitcher in Phillies history? You got high-priced in Turner and Harper. They give that appearance that they're a contender, but the offensive holes run so much more deeper than they look. So we're going to dive into that with Steve as well in about 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, Wheeler, he's putting up remarkable numbers. He really is. He's just putting up remarkable numbers for the Philadelphia Phillies. You're talking about a guy that's not only going to eat the innings, he's going to eat the innings for you. But here's a guy that, you know what you're getting. He's a workhorse. It's not 5 or 6, it's 7 or 8. He's a workhorse. He's going to give you, 7 plus, 7 2/3, 8. He's going to strike out 6 to 10. He'll give up a run here and there. But this month alone, the month of June, he's been he was unhittable. I mean, he was just brilliant. 0.58. And then what does he do the other night? He goes the distance. We talk about this all the time, do we not, in baseball? He throws a one-hitter, something we don't see anymore in baseball. We don't see these complete games. We don't see complete games one-hitter. We don't see complete game shutouts. We just don't, because the sport, the way the game is managed, 100% different than how it was, 15, 20 odd years ago. Totally different animal, the way managers manage, and they manage their starting rotation and their pen. But Zach Wheeler has been just a godsend for the Philadelphia Phillies. He really has. But it is a feast or famine club, right? Schwarber has 27, 28 home runs. Turner's been somewhat reliable, was average right over 300. Harper, it's always if he's healthy. Castellanos, Alec Bohm, Castellanos, I don't think has kind of lived up to the money he's being paid at the end of the day. He's not that difference maker. He's just not. But offensively, they have to figure it out, and they're probably going to have to go and grab another bat. And again, we talked a lot about their starting rotation. And you're trying to hang your hat on some of these workhorses, whether it's Sanchez, whether it's Ranger Suarez, Luzardo, Wheeler. I didn't even mention Nola. Wheeler seems to be that constant for the Philadelphia Phillies. Mets, a little bit of a different story, which we will get into as well. All right, 15 past 4 o'clock hour, just cranking up on a Tuesday edition. Middays with Q. Rich Quinones here. We will take you up to 6 o'clock straight up. I want to get to, again, some of these comments, a lot of baseball comments coming up. Steve Gardner in a couple moments. So we will start to get into the buyers, the sellers at the trade deadline. We're starting right now. You're starting to see a little separation in some of these divisions. Teams are trying to run away with some of these divisions. But I believe, you've got 2 or 3 really good teams in baseball right now. The Mets and Phillies are an enigma. The Yankees are struggling. I don't trust Toronto. I don't trust Detroit. So we'll kind of go around the league with Steve. We'll open up your comments as well. Keep it locked in. 15 past the 4 o'clock hour. We will take you up to 6 o'clock straight up on a very busy Tuesday edition of Middays with Q.
Glass got the drinks pouring. Take a risk like it's a short thing. Going in, yeah, I'm going all in. Too loud, yeah, you can bring a friend. Dive right in, let's go. No more than dip in the floor. Let the rhythm take control. It's going down tonight, yeah. Dive right in, let's go. No more than dip in the floor. Let the rhythm take control. It's going down tonight, yeah. Dive right in.
This is what the Down Beach Seafood Fest is all about. It's about community, it's about friends, it's about culture, right? The food culture in Atlantic County is rich.
Hidden in an abandoned campground in South Jersey lies a mystical encounter with booze and spirits, where bonfires burn, shadows dance, and flavor favors the bold. Ghosts, ghouls, goblins, grown-ups, it's time to reclaim Halloween. This is Witchcraft, October 10th and 11th. For tickets and information, visit witchcraftnj.com.
Hi, I'm Bruce Pascoe. I'm very fortunate. Years ago, I found something that I genuinely like to do, and it's something that helps other people. What I do is help people transition from traditional health insurance into Medicare. I've been doing it here in Atlantic County for more than 20 years. If you're getting ready for Medicare, call me for a free consultation. 609-484-9800.
All right, 19 past the 4 o'clock hour on a very busy Tuesday edition of Middays with Q right here on Triax57 YouTube channel X as well. Our good friend, great writer, USA Today, Hall of Fame baseball writer, Steve Gardner, kind enough to join us for a couple moments. The dog days of summer, my friend, and we've got some teams playing like a bunch of dogs. How are you?
I'm doing great, Rich. How about yourself?
Doing very well. Let's stick to the familiarity that we typically start off with some of the local teams, and then we'll get to Washington and some of the moves that they just made. But all right, the Yankees. We get a big-time Yankee contingent that tunes in. I know they're struggling. I'm over Boone. I know they're not going to pull the plug on Boone. I think some of his comments are absolutely delusional. I know they're not the best defensive fielding team. I know they have lapses as well. Offensively, they're impatient at times. The pitching has been issues, but I'm sorry. Like, I understand Toronto's on a run here and they won 9 straight, 9-1 over the last 10, but you can ill afford to get swept by Toronto. And then to come out and basically say, we still believe we're a good club, we're a good team. I just think those are delusional comments and they ring hollow. The Yankees fan is not a stupid fan. And at this moment, we're talking 2009. So you got Cashman, you got Boone right now. My patience is wearing thin. So what do you contribute the most to the Yankees' struggles?
Well, remember, this is a team that did make it to the World Series last year.
That does nothing for me.
I understand, but they do have at least somewhat of a record of success over the past 12 months. That said, yeah, what is it about this Yankees team that makes it worse than last year? I'll tell you what, I think this year's squad, maybe relies too much on Aaron Judge. We saw Juan Soto last year kind of share. Cody Bellinger has not been able to be an equal partner. And I think that's what you're seeing now is that like slumps are on top of each other.
Yep.
Bellinger is not hitting well and it's sort of cascading up. Volpe not hitting well at all.
Sure.
And when you have multiple guys going into slumps, I think it increases the pressure on, the best players, i.e. Aaron Judge. And so that's what makes it more difficult for the Yankees to kind of get out of this funk and get out of this rut and get back on the winning track. And when you're playing the team that's chasing you in the standings and then overtakes you in the standings, everything gets magnified even more.
Yeah, and I believe too, Judge is the AL MVP. I mean, it's a done deal. His numbers are staggering. You look at his batting average, slugging percentage, OPS. You look at the home runs. He's on pace to hit over 60. We know the career high a couple of years ago, but he's on pace for 66 right now. I feel as though they're wasting Judge's prime, Cole as well. Their middle relief, their bullpen, it hasn't really, it just hasn't panned out. It hasn't worked out. But in baseball, when do you start to hold the manager accountable for a team's struggles as opposed to just looking at, well, this batter's a feast or famine, or, well, you know what, he's really not a guy that's going to give you 6 or 7 innings. So when can we start saying, okay, Aaron Boone, you're beyond on the hot seat?
I know you said we'd talk about Washington a little bit later, but
Yeah,
the
bring it
quote
up.
from Dave Martinez comes to mind. Just a couple of weeks before getting fired, he said, it's not on the coaching staff. The coaching staff has nothing to do with it. The players have to play. And I thought that was a very interesting thing for a manager to say. And it felt like he was, maybe he knew his days were numbered.
Sure, and why not take a fired shot? I mean, but that's almost scapegoating, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the manager needs to know, especially if he's going to be around for a while, needs to know what his players need, when shaking up, when, it's time to calm everybody down, when it's time to rile everybody up. So in terms of, when that you've lost the clubhouse, that's another thing altogether. And I don't know that the Yankees are there yet. And the one thing is there's plenty of room for, even if you're only, 3-4 games, 3.5 games back in the standings.
Yep.
There's still time for a winning streak combined with a Blue Jays losing streak to make things, kind of, if not able to forget them, at least to put them aside and say, boy, that was a really crappy period, but now we're better. So I think this is one of those cases. The All-Star break for a lot of teams, and I think the Yankees, it comes at a great time, gives an opportunity to kind of reset, take stock, and see what's working, what's not working, and then get back out there after the break is over.
Who or what could help this team, right? I mean, again, I mean, position players, you acquire a third baseman, right? That should be at the
Yeah.
top of the list. Chisholm to me makes more of an impact at second, and LeMahieu, who's getting up there, is better coming off the bench. What's been happening with Boone is that bullpen right now is taxed. So you've got to have some, multiple upgrades here and there. And oh, by the way, I didn't even bring up that they just lost Clark Schmidt, so he's going to undergo
Right.
Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, and you're right. I think the third base situation is probably the primary thing that I would imagine they would have looked to address between now and the trade deadline. And if you can move Chisholm from third to second, as you said, that's the ultimate lineup. And whether that's Nolan Arenado or somebody else as maybe a lesser addition, but just somebody to stabilize defensively that spot and reconfigure it to where it's a better team. Because the Yankees, have had some defensive lapses. It has not been a smooth defensive team. So you need to improve that.
Yeah. Yep.
And adding somebody at third is one way to do it. And of course, at the trade deadline, there will always be relievers. There's a huge stockpile. Even bad teams have decent relievers that can help, at least with depth. So I think those are the two areas that we'll see the Yankees go after and make a play for between now and the trade deadline.
Yeah, Boone already said that Chisholm's going to start. He had 28 starts in a row at third. He's moving back to second. That starts tonight when they open up that series against Seattle. And again, remember too, they lost Cabrera, right? He went down with that season-ending ankle injury in early May 12th. Steve Gardner, kind enough to join us, USA Today. All right, so you mentioned the Nats. Was that a cleaning house where it's okay, the message is falling on deaf ears, or this is just a talented team but way too underachieving, or no, we got to get rid of, Rizzo. We got to get rid of Martinez. It's just not working with these guys.
I think, Rich, the weak link in the Nationals' development is not on the field. It's not in the dugout. It's not even in the front office, the GM seat. It's the ownership group. And if you have an ownership group that does not allow Mike Rizzo to go out and get players. Obviously, the Nationals have a nice core. Rizzo did a phenomenal job in getting return for Juan Soto and some of the other guys that he traded. And it was kind of under management's direction, under ownership's direction. I mean, the Nationals payroll this year was lower than it was in 2014.
Wow.
So that shows you that the purse strings have been tightened, considerably, and the Mike Rizzo's hands were tied behind his back to make the team better. So I don't know that it was his fault because he couldn't get some of the players. The bullpen has never been, anything a major league team should trot out there for the most part, with the exception of Kyle Finnegan. And that, because the starting rotation and the guys in the starting lineup couldn't go very far, you're going to the bullpen often and multiple days in a row, just a recipe for disaster. I think offensively, the Nationals have a pretty solid roster, but yet didn't really make any huge additions. Nate Lowe was a pretty good pickup, I think, from Texas, but in terms of free agents and things like that. So in my mind, Washington was just kind of floundering along. The Lerner family was thinking about selling the club and then decided that it wasn't a good idea to do, and they pulled it off the market. So that kind of uncertainty hovering over the entire franchise affected the way that Mike Rizzo did his job, the way that Davey Martinez did his job, and ultimately the way that the players on the field were able to do theirs. So I think it's a big mess there, and I don't think that bringing in a new manager and a new GM, especially, where we are in the baseball calendar, right up against the draft and the trade deadline.
There you go. Timing of it.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of throwing your hands up and saying, I don't know what we're going to do, and that's not a good sign for the Nationals or their fans.
It's never a good sign for an organization. You mentioned the timing; it's very peculiar, right? Because the
Hmm.
2025 MLB draft is right around the corner, and they get the overall selection. I know he had a couple of parting shots as well, and
Yeah,
right. No, I mean, listen, if you got to play the hand that's been dealt, but at times you also, like Parcells said years ago, if you want me to cook the meal, let me go shop for the groceries
right.
to some extent, right? Um,
Exactly.
and how about the Phillies right now? Speaking of this NL East, the Mets and the Phillies seem to kind of trade blows. Go back and forth. I just think this Phillies offensively, like, first of all, let me ask you this: pitching wise, is Wheeler? Can you envision a scenario where Zach Wheeler, when it's all said and done, we look at him and we say he's the best Phillies pitcher ever?
Hmm. Well, because he didn't start his career with the
Of
Phillies,
course not. I know. I understand
um,
that, but he's been dominant. He's been unbelievable. I pulled up
he
his
has been
numbers.
great. Yeah, I agree. I mean, what? Let's see. Just throw out some from from
Carlton,
from my lifetime. Yeah, I'll say Steve Carlton is there. Um, Cole Hamels is there. Roy Halladay certainly. Cliff
Doc,
Lee. That
yep,
was a great pitching staff there earlier this century.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, right now Zach Wheeler is, I think, the best pitcher in the National League, and it's not really close. I just had a piece that I published on USAtoday.com coming out in the print issue of USA Today Sports Weekly tomorrow.
Okay,
And what I did is I got the stats from the past full season of games. So the second half of last year plus the first half of this year. And you add those up, Zach Wheeler over the past calendar year has been the absolute best pitcher in the National League, bar none. Strikeouts, ERA, wins, however you want to measure it, you put them all together, and Zach Wheeler is number one. And he's just coming off that one hit complete game,
yeah, against the
uh,
Reds,
just fabulous.
yes.
So you would be, if you're not going deep into the playoffs and winning a championship, you are wasting Zach Wheeler's talent because he is just flat out outstanding.
Now, put it in perspective, because obviously he started his career with the Mets. As much as I do, Carlton started his career with St. Louis, and then he
Hmm.
played, I think, 12 or 13 seasons with the Phillies. Now, that 72 year, he won 27 games. I mean, he was phenomenal on a
Yeah,
bad Phillies team,
the
27 and
worst.
10.
Yeah.
They that team, I mean, I think they won maybe 50 games. And then I just pulled up Jim Bunning, who also
Mhm.
had a span with the Phillies, 19 and 8, 19 and 9, 19 and 4, 17 and 5. And I was looking at their ERA. I was again looking at their whip, looking at their strike, looking at everything. And the way Wheeler's starting to stack up, and you just mentioned this too, the fact that he throws a complete game, which is unheard of in today's
Right.
baseball. I mean, his
Right.
ERA in June was 0.58. So again, speculate, forecast. If he pitches another 5 years for the Phillies, and he this trajectory where it's 16, 17, 18 wins a season, now you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're talking 12 seasons on the hill with the Phillies. I mean, I'm just trying to add up. I think he's got what, 29, 26, 50, 60, 70 wins right now. He'll win, give him another 50 something, a buck 20 with the Phillies. I just don't know how you don't sit there and say he's, the greatest all time Philly. I just, pitcher. I just don't know how.
Yeah. Yep. And it's, obviously we're projecting into the
Of
future and
course,
there
of
are
course, of
injuries
course.
and all that sort of thing. So there's that little asterisk. But yeah, I mean, he is on that trajectory. And one guy that we did forget a little bit before my time, but I've got I got a Phillies cap up here on my shelf that is autographed by maybe the best pitcher in Phillies history, one Robin Roberts, Hall of
Robert
Fame.
Roberts. That's right. That's right. That's,
So,
that's a good pull by you.
luckily, I had it just right here within arm's reach to be
Yeah.
able to remind me. But yeah, it's Wheeler is on a roll, and the thing is, for now, he's been able to stay healthy and avoid the injury bug, which it seems like every single pitcher has had to deal with these days over the last couple of years. And volume has been his calling card, and he's been able to go to the mound like the horse that he is and be there every fifth day on a consistent basis, which is amazing.
So, I'm a stat geek. When it comes to the history, like that's my wheelhouse. So you mentioned Robin Roberts, and I'm like, well, yeah, I know he won like well over 200 games with the Phillies, but just to put it in perspective,
Mhm.
he goes 28-7 in 1952. Okay, out of those 35 games that he pitched, those outings, he had 30 complete games. He wins 23, 23, 23 the next 3 straight seasons, and he pitched 33, 29, 26 complete games. And I've
It's a different era, wasn't it? Gee.
I've talked about this for so long, right? It is a ridiculous. I mean, you go back to the AL years ago when James Shield, I think, led the AL in
Mhm.
complete games. It's a lost art. Right now, I want to get to a couple of comments. We were talking before you came on some of these complete teams in baseball. Scott chimes in. Houston, top 5 all team categories could be hollow stats, but they are right there. Do you look at the Astros as a team when we start to talk about World Series odds? I mean, yes, the Yankees are still up there. Yes, the Dodgers. Detroit, oh, by the way, starting to make a run. They leapfrog the Phillies when it comes to World Series odds. In the AL at this moment, more confident that Detroit can go to the ALCS or the Astros can go to the ALCS?
Um, I'll tell you what, the Tigers are really impressive. I mean, in terms of run differential, they're scoring, they're preventing runs. They have Tarek Skubal, which nobody else does, and that's a huge thing for them and a positive thing for them. So I don't know, if Detroit's offense is going to hold up maybe as well as maybe Houston's does, but they've gotten so many contributions from so many different players this season. Javi Baez making the All-Star team. Who saw that coming?
Yeah.
So it's one of those. I'm really interested to see now that Detroit has some postseason experience and some success from last year, how much that carries them, because that's been what we've said about the Astros for all these years, is that somehow or another they managed to find their way into the playoffs and then get hot.
Yep.
Don't melt down. Maybe that's the opposite. They just don't melt down like some teams
Right.
do, and they're able to get to the championship series. I'm interested to see if Detroit can take their experience and put it with the talent, that they have improved the club, and can get over the hump themselves.
Ball 316, didn't Wheeler say he's only playing 2 more years? Yeah, he mentioned that when his contract, I mean, it runs through 2027. He wants to walk away, spend time with the kids and the family. But you know what? If he's coming off back-to-back or back-to-back-to-back, Cy Young award, it's different when you're realizing, okay, you're kind of up against, history and whatnot. Listen, he's a workhorse, man. He's a throwback pitcher, period. Let me get to a couple comments. Kevin C., big time Yankees fan, says, Steve, it sounds like you don't believe the Yankees are going to make a drastic change, but what if they miss the playoffs? Can you see Boone out?
Oh, certainly. I think so. After going to the World Series and knowing that there is talent on that team, even though you're down Soto, you're down Cole, all that sort of stuff, if they don't get to the playoffs, I think that's got to be the death knell for Boone. I mean, the one thing that they've been able to build on, and the thing in his favor was, well, they keep making the playoffs, and someday they're going to have to bang through that kick the door down,
Right.
bop the ceiling up, or whatever. But if you don't even get to the playoffs, then after all of this, I think that's definitely the thing, that the straw that breaks the camel's back, whatever metaphor or cliche you want to use.
I know Washington, not the best roster, underachieving, and I'm not trying to strike a chord with you, but objectively,
Hmm.
which team has underachieved the most through what? Almost 90 games.
Of the Nationals or
Oh,
the
no,
Yankees?
in baseball.
Or any team.
Who?
of any team.
Yeah, I'm trying to lead you down that rabbit hole that might kind of get you perturbed because I'm trying to
Are you
prod. Go ahead.
are you maybe
Yeah,
thinking about the Orioles,
I am. I
perchance?
am. What is going on with your Orioles?
Uh,
I mean, a
I
little run now, little run. They just come off a nice little sweep over the
yeah.
Braves.
I mean, this is a team. Speaking of teams that are struggling, though, Atlanta from injuries mostly, but they're extremely disappointing too. I think with the Orioles, it's one of those things where there's some talk about, is Brandon Hyde on the hot seat? When Brandon Hyde was on the hot seat, that maybe the Orioles needed to work up something, rekindle a flame or whatever, and firing him seems to have done something to this team. So it makes me wonder if maybe just a different approach, change of voice in the clubhouse might be what they needed. I think getting Colton Cowser back and Jordan Westberg back, and maybe in a little while, maybe a couple more weeks, getting Grayson Rodriguez back, makes this Orioles team a little bit different from the one that was struggling so badly during the beginning of the year. Of course, all teams have injuries,
Yeah.
but it's one of those cases, I think, where negativity feeds on negativity, and bad things kind of snowball. That feels like what's happened to the Orioles in the early part of the season, and now they're just kind of shedding it a little bit to where they're playing some pretty good ball most nights. They'll still get shut out here and there, but most nights they seem to be playing a lot better and looking like, or at least more like, the team that I and a lot of other people thought they would be in the preseason.
Matt in the Northeast and Philly chimes in, listening on X, enjoying the baseball talk, guys. Steve, I'm curious. You talked a little bit about the Phillies and their pitching staff. Where do you think their holes are? What do they need to do come the trade deadline? Is it offense? I mean, if you ask me, I think their offensive holes run deeper than they look, to be quite honest with you. But what say you?
Yeah, I mean, they need to figure out who's closing. So a bullpen arm would certainly help, maybe two. And they need to figure out if Jesus Luzardo is broken.
Can I interrupt you for one second?
Yeah,
I feel bad. The Luzardo struggle is all me.
yeah.
I'm going to tell you, because when he was, I believe, 6-0, he was at plus
Mhm.
1,800 NL Cy Young
Yep.
candidate. And I said, take a flyer on him. His next two outings, I think he gave up 67 runs. So you can blame me. You can
Okay.
blame, and then he comes back and he has a good outing, and then he follows that up with a bad outing. So go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I kind of like the Phillies pitching staff.
I do too.
And
Sanchez,
so
Suarez, Wheeler. Yep.
yeah, and Ranger Suarez has been phenomenal. So in that case, I think just the spark at the bottom of the lineup. The top is great to me, and one of the better ones in the National League. But that Kepler, Real Muto's not having a great offensive
Mm-mm.
season. Stott's really not having a great offensive season. And then, Marsh, Rojas, whoever else is out there in the outfield. So maybe an outfield bat or somebody like that to kind of lengthen the lineup would be a big help for the Phillies. But I don't see a whole lot wrong with them, other than, certainly not a trade. Andrew Painter could be coming up, can help them out there. Crawford could be coming up and help them out. So it's one of those things where they're not that far away from being a team that could make some serious noise in October.
So a couple of things. You mentioned the offense and their bats, right? Right now, you look at their lineup; they're like low impact bats. So you brought up Kepler, which is a great example. You're trying to force production out of guys like him who struggled
Mhm.
since he came to Philly. And we forgot one elephant in the room with the pitching staff. It's
Yeah.
Nola. I mean,
Yeah.
he's I've gone on my little rants about Nola throughout the course of his career. He's so inconsistent.
Hmm.
And I just, I'm almost trusting a guy like Sanchez or Suarez in the playoffs than a guy like Nola, who's got the track record of being there.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And we also don't know, once he does come back, is he going to be 100%? Is he going to be 90%? What how how much of Aaron Nola are we going to see going forward the rest of the season?
All right. Lastly, so I had some guys, they knew you were coming on today, and they know you're Hall of Fame writer. They know your stance on the PEDs and the roids and everything. Yesterday we were talking about certain criterias, and I brought it up because I was watching the 30 for 30 home run chase in 98, which,
Okay.
and I remember all those games, McGuire, Sosa, back and forth, watching them break the record on the sofa in my house with my father. Here we go. Had tickets to the series against the Phillies. My friends wanted to go I wanted to go on a friggin' Tuesday. They said no. McGuire hits 3 home runs. We go back the next night. Gaetti hits 2. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I believe that baseball at that time and C-League at that time, they knew exactly what was going on. You don't say anything because you're bringing families to the seats. Now, in hindsight, years later, do you look at that season A, and again, in your mind, it's got to be the asterisk, knowing what we know, and the fact that a lot of those players, the shadow of the Mitchell report, juicing, the PED. So when you think of 98, do you sit there and say, yeah, it brought baseball back, but?
I mean, you have to have that little asterisk, the mental asterisk there, because we know what happened, as a result of everything. But in the moment, when I think about the home run chase of 98, I think about just the feeling of being a baseball fan. And every night or every afternoon, you're glued to what is happening that day. And that, to me, is like the greatest part of baseball, is that you get a game, you get all sorts of games
Sure.
every single day for a 6-month period. And to have those games mean so much. I remember my daughter was in elementary school back then, and I remember kids that hardly knew anything about baseball, were not baseball fans. They were talking about that. When I would go for parent teacher conferences and assemblies and all that sort of stuff, there's people talking about, I like Mark McGuire, I like Sammy Sosa. And to me, that cultural envelope that everybody was part of, to me, that was a lot more good during those years than the cloud takes away from. So that's kind of how I remember baseball. And I remember too, when I just started working for usatoday.com, and nobody wanted to do baseball. Baseball was kind of a toxic sport because of, you'd had the strike, you'd had the World Series that we missed, and nobody really was interested in being the baseball point person. And that's kind of how I found my little niche, because I was like, hey, I like baseball. And then, right after that, here comes the home run chase, and all of a sudden baseball is cool again.
Sure. And then everyone wanted to sit there and say, hey man, I'll take some of this writing off your plate. And you're like, no.
Right.
Now we've gotten, like I said, because I know it's been a couple of weeks since we last spoke out, a lot of new guys tuning in, baseball fans. And before I let you get out of here, we were talking about it yesterday, the criterias, right? Where in the NFL, you get over 10,000 yards, 10,000 receiving yards, 100 touchdowns. If you throw for 40,000 yards, you win a Super Bowl here and there. And then we were kind of separating that with the compilers. And I know it's a little more of the norm in baseball. You and I have talked about this when we debated the Fred McGriff and the Harold Baines, and nothing to take away from either player. I was a big proponent for McGriff, and obviously good to see in Baines getting in. As a voter, and you don't have to peel back the curtain, but I am curious, how do you, when you look at a player, do you look at their body of work in its entirety, or do you look at impact years that they had on the sport, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And there's no precise yes or no, A or B kind of answer to that, because it all blends together. I think primarily my criteria was the player one of the dominant players, one of the elite players of his era. And that can mean any number of different things. You can have an era that's not really that big, like, say, Johan Santana, somebody who was really, really good for, a 8-7 year period, versus somebody who's had a great career. And, if somebody is consistently among the best, then to me, those are the guys that stand out and who deserve the most analysis, the most scrutiny, and generally the most credit for what they've done during their careers. So it doesn't have to be a super long career. And in fact, I think I'm more of a peak person than I am somebody who rewards longevity. If that makes any sense. I like for Omar Vizquel,
Yep.
very lengthy career,
Career.
Lots of hits and all of that sort of
Gold
stuff.
glove. Yep.
But to me, just not enough accomplishment overall to be considered as somebody that I would vote for.
So then you go by the short burst, and I'm glad. So the comp we were using in the NFL was Terrell Davis.
Yeah.
Right. So then by that rationale, explain to me short burst, Don Mattingly and Kirby Puckett, their career numbers are pretty much identical. Now, does Puckett, again, a little more of the body of the work because of the 2 World Series, but then you have, Donnie Baseball, that was pretty much arguably the best player in the sport for 3-4 straight seasons.
Yeah. And I think what we've seen is kind of an evolution in the way that baseball writers look at careers. I mean, when we were, in the 80s and the 90s and so on, we were looking at wins. We were looking at RBIs. We weren't looking at WAR. We weren't looking at OPS plus.
Yep.
And we were looking at championships, World Series rings. And I think, when players don't get into the postseason and we don't see them, again, shorter postseason, smaller postseason, fewer players, fewer teams get in back in the day, you're not getting that stage to show what you can do with all the national TV cameras and all the viewers watching you. So it made, certainly Mattingly had plenty of people watching him all the time, but it also gave more visibility to players like Kirby Puckett, who were at their best when the games meant the most.
So then I'll put you on the spot to close it out. Just looking on face value, the career and the numbers, is Albert Bell a Hall of Famer?
Okay. I would.
You're like, I feel like you bring this guy's name up every single year, Rich.
Well, it's something along the lines of, he wasn't terribly liked by a lot of the sports writers back then, and we've seen that there is somewhat of a bias in the voting populace.
Yeah.
In terms of peaks and all of that, which I've been talking about, you'd have to say that Albert Bell had a pretty significant and sizable peak where he was one of the best players of his era. So maybe, had I had a vote back then, I could see myself seriously considering him along the lines of like a Gary Sheffield, who I did vote for. So that's if that's an answer that
really you voted for Gary Sheffield.
I did. I sure did. I thought he had a sustained period of excellence in addition to all of the 500 some home runs that he
509. Now, would you look at him potentially, even though his last several seasons, 25, 19, and 10, 6 in 2006, but 34 home runs, 36, 39, going backwards, by the way, 2005, 4-3 with the Yankees. He played, 21 seasons.
Yeah.
Would 3,000 hits have kind of put him, is 3,500 the barometer?
I don't know now if those marks, the 3,000, those round numbers, 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, I don't know if they're automatic qualifiers anymore. because we're not seeing as many singles. We're seeing more players walk. We're looking on base percentage now has become more of a judge of how good of a hitter you are than just batting average. So, yeah, I don't know that. Obviously, the more hits you compile, the
Sure.
more impressive your stats are. But I don't think a jump from from 3,000 to 3,500 is that huge of a difference maker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Madman says Nomar should be in the Hall of Fame. And you remember too, you're just not looking at stats too, especially if you're looking at an infielder, a shortstop, a second baseman. What are we
Yeah.
looking at? Gold gloves. We're looking at the defensive gems. We're looking at stolen bases. I mean, Garcia Parra.
I think again,
Yeah, yeah,
injuries and whatever, his career was just too short, and his peak was not as great as certainly as A-Rod, but
right.
that's a different category. But
Sure.
that you're measured against your peers, and
Right.
Nomar and A-Rod were kind of in the same breath all the time, and Jeter. Those
Yeah.
three were all in the same breath all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, you said that piece is coming out. That you're gonna
Yeah,
have now?
in print, in Sports Weekly coming out tomorrow, and it is online right now. If you go to usatoday.com to the baseball page, it's on there.
And don't forget, everyone, follow Steve on X at Steve A. Gardner. Does a great job. Baseball writer, reporter, senior fantasy editor, too, at USA Today Sports. And always kind. I got to get him back on the weekly spots. We know now Tuesdays might be the best days. And that's good because I need the therapy after the Yankees have these Harvest series.
I hear you.
All right, Steve. I always appreciate the extended time as always, my friend. Thank you very much. Be well.
Thanks, Rich. Always appreciate it.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. There you have it. My guy, Steve Gardner. He's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, we've gone back and forth for years debating the merits of some of these, borderline fringe Hall of Famers, or I should say borderline fringe Hall of Famers. And the debate always rages on. It does. And I think baseball, to Steve's point, he was pretty transparent. Look, he looks for the burst and not so much the longevity. But I feel some of these guys in baseball get in because of the longevity. I really do. I really, really do. I mean, these guys are playing 20-something odd years, right? The hit streak is over, Q. You went from dapper straight to disheveled. Bro, no, get out of here. What are you talking about? See, that's a banned comment. It's 93 degrees and Casa de Quinones. And guess what? I'm turning around and I wanted to wear the nice tee today, the blue tee, the baby blue. I don't need that kind of nonsense from you. De facto, take that somewhere else. And you know what? We're going to mark the tape right now. We're marking the tape. Disheveled? Are you kidding me? Well, but look how dapper I look. We're marking the tape at this moment. 4:57. De facto at this moment, a 5-minute ban. You're allowed to comment after the 5 o'clock hour. That's it. Unbelievable. The hit streak. No, stop it. It's a Tuesday. It's a Tuesday. So there's allowed to be a day during the week where we might want to be a little lax. Tomorrow, we'll be back in a collared shirt. I don't understand. Give me a little charity, will you? Utterly ridiculous. Don't you have some Phillies 1993 VHS tape to watch? Maybe 91, Buddy Ryan, Eagles. Don't you have something like that to do? Instead, you're bothering me with this nonsense, talking about disheveled. Just unbelievable. Tell me I'm disheveled. Scott brings back a little sanity to the show. Steve is a great guest, man. I can listen to him for a while. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. No, he's fantastic. He is a historian. He definitely knows his baseball. Man taking a little, I wouldn't say umbrage, enjoying the fact that I'm getting tagged today. What do we got here? That was a good one, de facto. Put him into full rage day after game 1. Knicks Pacers. Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. De facto comes in with this nonsense, this apt nonsense. We sit there for 2 hours and we tell you guys, bring something to the table. And that's what you're bringing to the table on a 93-degree day on July 8th. Had great friggin' baseball talk with Steve Gardner, and you're worried about my attire? Utterly acceptable. Unacceptable. Not to mention, I'm running very low on fresh roasted coffee. Very low. Very low on fresh roast out. I'm not happy about that. De facto's got 5 more minutes. I'm telling you right now, banned. 5 more minutes. All right, 5 o'clock straight up. Lloyd Vance on the other side. We'll talk a little NFL, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk a little NFCs. Maybe we'll mix in a little Eagles talk. Who knows? But we'll go around the league with Lloyd. By the way, there is great there is a great little tidbit coming out in the NFL. And I mentioned this coach, I believe, is potentially on the hot seat. And oh my goodness, talk about pouring a little gasoline on that fire. We'll break it down as well on the other side. 16 of books, 5 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. Keep it locked in on a Tuesday. We'll take you up to 6 right here on a Tuesday edition of Middays with Q.
The glass got the drinks pouring. Take a risk like it's a short thing. Going in, yeah, I'm going all in. Getting too loud, yeah, you can bring your friend. Dive right in, let's go. Move forward and dip in the flow. Let the rhythm take control. It's going down tonight, yeah. Dive right in, let's go. Move forward and dip in the flow. Let the rhythm take control. It's going down tonight, yeah. Dive right in.
This is what the Down Beach Seafood Fest is all about. It's about community, it's about friends, it's about culture, right? The food culture in Atlantic County is rich.
Hidden in an abandoned campground in South Jersey lies a mystical encounter with booze and spirits, where bonfires burn, shadows dance, and flavor favors the bold. Ghosts, ghouls, goblins, grown-ups, it's time to reclaim Halloween. This is Witchcraft, October 10th and 11th. For tickets and information, visit witchcraftnj.com.
Hi, I'm Bruce Pesco. I'm very fortunate. Years ago, I found something that I genuinely like to do, and it's something that helps other people. What I do is help people transition from traditional health insurance into Medicare. I've been doing it here in Atlantic County for more than 20 years. If you're getting ready for Medicare, call me for a free consultation. 609-484-9800.
5 o'clock straight up, 16 of books. We'll take you up to 6 on a absolutely scorcher of Tuesday. Oh my goodness. What are you guys must be cranky today too. You guys are, again, you're getting on me with nonsense. You're getting on me with the fact that I decided to wear more of a dress kind of shirt today, as opposed to the collared ones that I'm always dealing with. And yet, for some reason, you think, you guys would sit there and you would say, okay, you know what? We're going to give him, we get it. He's dressing up. He's playing the part. We appreciate everything he's doing. And he's giving us great sports content. And then you guys just decide, because it's 98 friggin' degrees out today and I'm going in a different direction. I couldn't even walk the dog. I had to take her at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I don't even know. Nat's Greenhead, she was going absolutely berserk. But I will say this as I bring in our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 FM The Game. So how about this? The dog the other day, didn't feel well. And I think sometimes, how dogs just will eat anything and they spray the grass. So she was just a little lethargic. It's been very hot and just, couldn't keep anything down, had a little bit of the doggy runs for like a day or two. So what do? We get the white rice, we boil the chicken, Lloyd, because that's what I do. I take care of my Kiki. I take care of my dog, do a little of the pumpkin, wait a day. She hasn't gone to the bathroom. Now I'm getting a little worried. This morning, I decide we're going to switch it up a little bit. Massage the belly, walk her around, get her going. I got to tell you, it was a sigh of relief because the dog was constipated for a good day. And then she was able to just do what she had to do. And I'm bringing this up because it set the tone for the rest of my day. It set the tone to put me in a much better spot, in a much better place, because I was worried, but now I'm a little more relaxed. So I decided, because it's 98 friggin' degrees today on a Tuesday in July down the shore, I couldn't go with the collar shirt in Casa de Quinones in the studios of Middays with Q. So we went this direction, and the viewing audience just decides we're going to pile on me today, which I think is out of bounds. That's all.
Yeah, where would you want? You remember our old radio days? Nobody saw you, so
that is true. But we had to clean it up a little bit. This is what I'm saying. You don't wear a collar and I catch a ban. Coincidence. I gave a 5-minute ban to De Facto for making fun of me and mocking me like that. So there we have it. All right. So I wanted to get into this with you for a couple of minutes. And again, you guys get a chance, Lloyd, every Monday, 8 o'clock to 9, Sports Radio 102.9 FM, The Game with our guy, Angel Martinez. You do a great job, you and your co-host as well. And I know your son chimes in and will co-host with you, but give Lloyd a follow at Lloyd Vance. We talked about some of these head coaches that are potentially on the hot set. And now you get a little bit of the rift coming down in Miami. Former players coming out, talking about the way they were running the team, and it's kind of a joke, and it's soft, and it's this, and here we go. If there's a team that I would say right now in July that has to watch their back, or a head coach, it's got to be what's going on in Miami, first and foremost. And I want to ask you this to start things off. Do you believe they have buyer's remorse for giving Tua that type of contract?
Interesting. You know what? This is one of the topics I had last night on my show, and I firmly do agree with you that Mike McDaniel's on a hot seat there. Chris Greer, the general manager as well, kind of underachieving, and Tua is a big thing to this. Q, he only played 11 games last year, and this injury factor is very real because the concussions that he sustained, you just wonder, is he going to ever be right? And I think they kind of signed Zach Wilson, bringing him over from Denver as, okay, maybe a potential stopback. But, Tua, it's going to be a problem that's out there. And then you have to talk about Stephen Ross, the owner there. He's very old. He's 85 years or so, and he's got to be getting impatient in terms of, will they win now? And the roster has a lot of offensive weapons, but the offensive line kind of in flux. The defense hasn't been the same since Fangio was there. And I've heard a lot of the same kind of backbiting that you've heard.
Yeah, the Sun Sentinel reported that Miami was fed up with Jalen Ramsey, and that's one of the reasons they traded him to the Steelers last week. He became disruptive with the team, and he hurt the culture. And a lot of times when we talk about culture in sports, it boils down to the locker room, but who's got to cut the head off the snake? It's got to be the head coach, right? But you have a player that's late to practice, consistently undermining, a former defensive coordinator, a lifer in Vic Fangio, and now the current head coach, Mike McDaniel. To me, that kind of reeks of a coach that's on the hot seat. And by the way, to add insult to injury, what is Asante Samuel Sr. comes out and has these comments about potentially his son, making a move over there. I mean, he kind of torched him, did he not? And I don't know, when you get former players that come out and they start torching current head coaches, it's never a good look at all.
Yes, Q. And his son is a free agent coming over from the Chargers, looking for a new opportunity. And Asante Samuel Sr., a guy I covered when he was with the Eagles, he's never minced words. And he came right out and he was like, undisciplined environment. I don't know if I want him to go there. And maybe Samuel Jr. kind of waits into training camp and see if somebody gets hurt, a better opportunity. Miami, you heard comments from Jordan Brooks last year talking about the team was kind of soft when it got cold outside, those types of things, Q. So, a lot flying around this team. We know about Tariq Hill and his situation, and are they going to be able to keep him happy? Jalen Waddle, Chen, they have a lot of names, but that trade to me with the Steelers really didn't make a lot of sense. You're bringing him back, Mika Fitzpatrick, who is a good player, but okay, Ramsey must have been such a big problem. They wanted to get rid of him. But Jonnu Smith was a huge part of that offense last year. They threw so many passes to him. You just wonder what kind of plan they have in place. And Greer has not had the best drafts the last couple of years. So definitely the heat is on in Miami.
Yeah, Lloyd has a collar on. It's hot where he is, I am sure. Yeah, de facto, go back in hiding, will you? Please, go back in hiding. The drop-off between Tua and the next guy up is very steep. Who can Miami get that is better option than Tua? They can't do anything. They paid him all the money. They're not going to, like you said, if he gets hurt, it's Zach Wilson, which is not really your best, option. Listen, I went on the record, and as I'm sure, the tape has been marked. I said you have to pay him. After he had the season, he was MVP 7-8 weeks into the season. Then he got hurt. It's unfortunate. But they were going to pay him because that's what the market bared, period. Look, I just think that division, Buffalo should win that division easily. The Jets are going to stink. New England might be a little better. But Miami's going to be interesting because if they implode and they are drastic and make an in-season head coaching change, is McDaniel a coach that you believe will be courted? Do you believe he's a good head coach?
It was interesting because Kevin, my co-host, brought this up. He said if he's fired, he'll be like Andy Reid and get a job within a couple of weeks. That's the way he believes. Now, McDaniel's believed to be this mad scientist in terms of offense. He's from the McVay Shanahan tree, and yes, he's done some very good things in terms of. They put up a lot of points a couple years ago, and they were high flying, and everybody thought they were, going to be in the mix for a championship. But once the playoffs start, you saw the deficiencies with this team. They're built for their home track.
Correct.
Even in a dome, they kind of weren't playing well when they had to travel. So, I'm just not sure if he has he's a good OC. I just don't know in terms of a leader of men. Is he that guy? So. I think he would have to kind of maybe work his way back up, kind of like what you're seeing Chip Kelly doing. He went to the college ranks, and now he's back with the Raiders.
Chip Kelly's a clown. He's a clown. I said this when the Eagles hired him. I said he's not lasting 5 years in the NFL. I remember, covering some of those games too with Chip Kelly, and I remember they had that horrible loss. I think it was against Detroit, Tampa, and Miami in succession, and he sat up there, and this is after he stuck Howie in the little table with the kids, right? And Chip, all that arrogance that he had coming in, the bravado, I had a friggin' here was quack, 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 right? The Oregon, the Ducks, the offense, and here we go. And they're going to just pull the trigger and let it rip, let it rip. He got humbled so fast. I think McDaniel, the way he carries himself, whether we want to sit there and say that he is a, kind of like, I don't want to say laissez-faire / passive-aggressive kind of spacey. I don't know if that would fly in other markets. I just really don't. Now, look, he's young. He's 42, 43. So, you're talking about a young guy that made that quick ascension, kind of like a McVay. But the difference is McVay's had a lot more success than McDaniel has.
Yes, and he's been open to change and try some different things. He has Les Snead that they worked hand in hand with. And sometimes I just wonder if Greer, their general manager, and McDaniel are on the same page a lot of times in terms of their decisions and what they decide to do. So, it is going to be key to see what Tua does if he's healthy. He's kind of changed his look again. He seems to do that every offseason. but he's got to be able to withstand the concussions. He lost one of his tackles to retirement. That's going to be a big thing. Offensive line there has been in flux for a number of years. I just don't think it's going to end well this season for Miami Q. You talked about them having to play Buffalo, and they have a pretty tough schedule.
I love this story coming out with Kirk Cousins, right? Said he might have resigned with Minnesota last offseason. Captain Kirk resigned with Minnesota last offseason had he known the Atlanta Falcons were going to draft a quarterback in the first round. Now, we can take this a couple ways. He signs back with Minnesota. He's a starter. Slinging Sammy Darnold story never happens, right? But you mean to tell me he had no inkling that Atlanta was going to draft a quarterback, or he signs with them, Atlanta decides, okay, maybe they're not entirely sold after giving them, once again, a lot of money, guaranteed money. A couple weeks later, they turn around in April's draft and they draft Michael Penix Jr. Like, either Atlanta has no clue what the hell they're doing as an organization, or maybe Kirk Cousins is not being fully transparent with this. Like, I find it hard to believe. It shocked us that they drafted the kid after signing Cousins, but maybe they just felt, an insurance policy. And as an organization, they have the right to do that.
They do. And you have Arthur Blank there, the owner, and he's kind of meddlesome sometimes. Maybe he told Fontenot, the general manager, look, draft this kid. He's there, But it was odd, Q. They signed Kirk Cousins to $100 million contract. Oh, yeah. Huge contract. And he kind of – it fizzled with the Vikings the last couple games. And you were like, okay, but they're going to give him his opportunity to be like Flacco was with Cleveland the first time around and resurrect his career. But you're bringing in Penix Jr., a kid that played in the national championship game, played very well. He was injured a lot in his college career, but he was – ascending coming out at the combine in the draft, and they grabbed him. So I thought Atlanta all along would try to improve their defense. That's kind of what they did in this draft. But they bring Penix there and break in case emergency, and they needed him because Kirk Cousins gets kind of banged up and starts throwing interceptions all over the place. And now the market is not there for Kirk Cousins. Teams are not trying to grab him. You thought maybe the Saints or some of these other teams would try to grab him, but he's injured and he makes a lot of money.
Yeah, I thought Kirk Cousins was on borrowed time, and I'm not going to sit there and say it was all on him because he didn't play that bad. But prior to last season, or this last season in Minnesota, when they lost that wild card game at home to the Giants 31-24, the play that just resonates with me, I mean, it should if you're a Vikings fan, is 4th and 8. You're 4th and 8 late in the game, $1:44 to go. You're on your own 48, and what does he do? It's a 3-yard check down on 4th and 8 to TJ Hawkinson. Like, I don't, that's your classic Kirk Cousins check down. Now, it would have been interesting if he resigns, because again, who knows if they draft a kid out of Michigan, and who knows what happens with Sam Darnold. Kirk Cousins has made a substantial amount of money in his career. If I'm Cousins, I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, I'm set for 26, generations, right, of life. But I want to play. He's not going to play with Penix being the starter. He's not, unless the kid goes down. If you try to force that trade, you can also veto where you want to go. But also, who's going to take that contract on? I mean, he's without a doubt the most expensive backup in the NFL, is he not?
Yes, he is. And I think his number is about $27 million or so this year. And the thing is, Q, over $300 million earnings in his career, only one playoff win. So, nobody's going to cry for him. He's had his opportunities, and he reminds me of Sam Bradford. These two guys, they should put a mask on sometimes when they go to get their paycheck, But I have a sneaky suspicion maybe somebody will get injured or something will happen, and they'll be able to say, okay, maybe they'll find a landing spot for him. But it's going to be very odd to see him making that amount of money and sitting behind Penix if it's after the preseason.
And de facto says there are trade rumors starting for Terry McLaurin down here in the DMV. Rumors he wants $33 million. If your Eagle pushing Commanders won't pay him, which NFL team will? So people they don't like the fact that, especially Eagles fans, that I said Washington's going to push him. right? I mean, they hate the fact that I came on the air and I was probably the only one in the country that said Washington might win the division, let alone make the playoffs, and they went to the NFC Championship. So this is what they do. The haters come out, the trolls come out. That's fine. Now, with all that being said, are we getting to this standstill right now between McLaren and the Commanders, and you got this face-off, and maybe their hand's going to be pushed to try to trade him?
Well, it's a situation, Q. It's always who has the leverage, and the team has the leverage, and Joshua Howard is coming in there and as the owner, and he's not going to help McLaren to dictate where he's going to go and everything. They need him. So McLaren, they'll probably wait him out. And let's not forget, once training camp starts, the fines can be up to $50,000 per day for a veteran. And in these holdings, typically, if it's a lengthy one, it just does not work out for the player. I always talk about Le'Veon Bell. He sat out that year with the Steelers. The Steelers like, all right, go pound sand. They still made the playoffs without him. He came back with the Jets, and he was just never the same guy after that year off. So McLaren, a lot of guys talk tough, but when it comes time to report to camp, they kind of acquiesce. Maybe him and his agent can work something out there with Adam Peters, the new general manager. But it's going to be something to monitor.
Yeah, but if you ask me, I believe the Commanders can afford to let this drag into the summer. They cannot let it drag on and on. Going training camp, you start to creep in August, and you mention a guy like Le'Veon Bell, you would think, okay, that year off helps you in a running back. He was never the same guy. Now, the other thing is, again, the elephant in the room, you're talking about the best weapon for Jaden Daniels. He needs him out on the field. What happens is these guys sign contracts, and then they look, it's like when you're a kid and you get that bike, and 2 days later, little Johnny, your neighbor, gets a better bike. Well, you haven't even had your bike for 2 days, and already you're bothering your parents for an upgrade. I mean, this is exactly what's happening, right? You got a wide receiver that's asking for $30 million per year or more, which is fair because he's looking at the current market. But the Commanders, play devil's advocate. I guarantee they're probably sitting there saying, "Wait, the sticking point is your age." And that's probably why, maybe you could, from a business standpoint, I can strike a better deal with Lloyd because, you're starting to creep up a little bit in age. Now you got to come back and we have to compromise. And I think they need to get something done. And McLaren, I'm not going to tell someone to be a team player. Go out and get yours. But man, this will turn around and bite them in the fanny if he's not in camp, engaged, and ready to go by September because they need him.
Right, and he's looking at the contract Justin Jefferson got from the Vikings. Jamar Chase got that huge deal from the Bengals. I think he's the highest paid receiver right now. And McLaren's like, okay, I'm just as good as those guys. CeeDee Lamb got that big deal with the Cowboys in his division. He's looking at all that, and he's like, I'm my team's difference maker at receiver. You got to pay me like those wide receiver ones. But, it's all negotiation at the table. And that's why you hire your agent. You want that guy to sit there. And because I'm sure on the other side, you have Harris and Peters. They're saying, well, your production is not as good as those guys, and you should make that money now. Q, maybe they can come to some kind of resolution. Maybe they push some of the money forward this season and then kind of say, okay, we can still franchise you and do number of things. But I fully expect McLaren to be in a Commander's uniform. But, yeah, it's going to be a stalemate for a little while.
So, I mean, de facto trying to maybe, take a shot at Debo. We don't allow that. We don't take body shots at athletes. But he brings up an interesting point regarding Debo, and I want to bring it from this, this vantage point here. I know Brock Purdy's been pretty adamant. He was not too happy about some of the moves that the 49ers made. So the 49ers decide we're going to move on to Debo. It does appear to be the right one when you consider the salary cap situation, not if he's in shape or out of shape, but they're kind of faced with this reality now, right? You pay Purdy, and you're trying to keep a veteran roster together. So they had the injuries last year. They took the step back. You mentioned it in 2024. It's that juggling act, right? Because I'm trying to sacrifice. I'm trying to keep players engaged. I'm trying to pay the players that I want to pay, but I'm also trying to keep my roster intact. And, you look at the 49ers right now, how they're presently constructed. Do you believe they take a step back, or they can be that team that we saw a couple seasons ago, competing in the NFC, getting to the NFC Championship, getting to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, Q, they're going to be interesting because they're one of those teams did not make the playoffs last year. A lot of disappointment, as you were talking about, but they had so many guys at their respective positions making the highest in the NFL. And, whether it was Trent Williams at left tackle, even Juszczyk, their fullback, was making the most, George Kittle, and they had to make some business decisions like sending Debo to Washington,
Yeah.
Hafang now in Denver, and a bunch of other defensive guys. They still do have Fred Warner at linebacker, playing him very well. They drafted Pearsall to kind of come in there and compete for that top receiver spot. They need Brandon Ayuk to come back from that knee injury. So they need a lot of pieces to come together. I do think that they can compete for a wild card spot. I'm just not sure about winning that division and the juggernaut that they were a couple years ago. It's going to depend on McCaffrey as well. He's got to be first and foremost. He's got to play up to that contract Q, and he's got to be healthy.
Well, it's the latter, right? I mean, you're talking about a player that's great when he's on the field, but he's always banged up. And again, he's 28, 29.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about his touches, right? 2022, that's when he played 6 games with Carolina before he got traded, the shocking trade to San Francisco. So 17 games, he had 244 touches. He had 272 2023, and it kind of tells you the body starts to break down, and he missed 13 games last season. I mean, he is the focal point of that offense. I feel as though maybe I overvalued the 49ers in a little bit of haste about a month or two ago, because I'm really starting to look at these teams and how the rosters are constructed, especially in the NFC, because we focus a little more on the NFC in our backyard. And man, I'll tell you, you look at that NFC West, I don't think it's a gauntlet of a division. I think Arizona will be better. I'm not as high on the Rams as you are. I know their defense is, good. I think they're an older team. Seattle, to me, we'll see what my guy does under center. I think they're somewhat of an enigma. Is this a division where 9 wins is going to win you the division?
Well, this division, they beat up on each other, Q. It seemed like all of them had a 3-3 record in division, and somebody's got to step up. And it's going to be interesting to see if Seattle can do some things with Darnold. They still do have Walker there. Obviously, they want JSN to kind of step forward. But the first one at 10, I'll say 10 wins could probably get it done. We saw Seattle a couple of years ago with Geno Smith. That was good enough to get them into the playoffs. And then Matthew Stafford with the Rams. How much does he have left? He's getting a little older, about 36, 37 years of age. No Cooper Kupp. And then are hoping Puka Kanua can be the number one guy, as well as bringing over Devontae Adams. So a lot of moving pieces there. And we're going to know early in training camp if these veterans for the Niners, these high-paid guys, are able to still perform at a high level.
5:30 on a Tuesday edition, Middays with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. Host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on SR 1029 FM, The Game, every Monday, 8 to 9. I wanted, before I let you get out of here, we were talking about, Hall of Fame and, body of works with some of these players. The running back position, we were going through the list of all these running backs and guys that we think, they're questionable, they're borderline, they definitely should get in, they shouldn't have gotten in, but they're in, there's nothing we can do it right now. What's the baseline when you talk about the running back position in the Hall of Fame? In your eyes, is it, 12,000 yards, 85 touchdowns, another 3,000 receiving, 13,000 from scrimmage? I mean, the running back position first, because I do want to ask you about the wide receiver positions. Like, do you have a baseline when you're talking, okay, yeah, this guy, look at his numbers, look at his body work, Hall of Famer?
Sure. Any player, I always say, you have to have 10 years of excellence in order to start talking that conversation. You have to have some all-pros in your back pocket. I really don't – Pro Bowls – because you get the injury replacements and all that stuff. But in terms of running back position, you have to at least have over 10,000 yards, 11,000 yards on your resume. And in the new NFL, we're just not seeing those guys with the big numbers like back in the day when Emmett was carrying the mail, Barry Sanders and those guys, they were putting up some big numbers every season. Eric Dickerson. It's going to be interesting to see in such a pass happy league, can some of these other running backs get in? I think some more of the dual threat guys are going to start getting a more of a look in terms of, they may not have the rushing yards, but they may have more receiving yards. And I want to see, I think Roger Craig finally got in. He was a dual threat guy. And then you talk about some of the older players like Curtis Martin, and winning's also a big thing, Q. You have to, a Super Bowl on your resume definitely helps. And you talk about Tiki Barber, you talk about Eddie George, Ricky Waters. Waters did win a Super Bowl, but he doesn't have the numbers of some of those other guys that I named. So it's going to be interesting to see which running backs they pick. They always do seem to pick a variety of positions rather than running backs.
Yeah, I mentioned Craig yesterday, right? 3-time Super Bowl champ, NFL Offensive Player of the Year, 4-time Pro Bowl, all decade, not in, right? San Francisco 49ers Hall of Fame. You look at the 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same season. Lastly, before I let you go, you look at Randy Moss's numbers, you look at Terrell Owens' numbers. How come Owens is not in the Hall of Fame?
Well, T.O.'s in the Hall of Fame. They just made him wait because he did not get along with a lot of the voters. And then that was why he didn't show up. He did his thing.
God, you're right. I forgot about that. I was saying it yesterday. So, someone actually pointed out, they're like, no, Q, after the show, they said he got in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, I'm watching Poetica, why this guy's not in the Hall of Fame. And he didn't show up. You're right.
Yeah, he didn't show. And the big thing is with a guy like him, and it's going to be funny in a couple of years to see if Antonio Brown, if it's similar, when you kind of have this resume, and I think the panel is 46 guys, and I've talked to a lot of them over the years because they're in the Writers Association as well. And it's basically an argument in the room between those 46 guys. They kind of talk, and, somebody's got to present the player and be able to say, okay, this is why they're a Hall of Famer and defend their point.
Yeah, by the way, thank you. I totally forgot he did not show up for Hall of Fame week. And I'm sitting here saying, I can't believe it. They're comparable numbers. Now, he wasn't voted in his first 2 years of eligibility, but he was ranked in the top of every NFL receiving category at the time.
He was, and it's laughable. And these writers, some of them, they have their favorites, and they have an agenda that they want to push. And some of the guys did with Terrell Owens. They said he was a bad guy, bad locker room guy. That has nothing to do with it. I mean, the guy was an all-time talent. Especially after he played for the Eagles in that Super Bowl when he didn't have to play, signed a waiver, and he was dominant in that game. And then even in Dallas, he was a dominant player.
Yeah. Joe D chimes in. Q, I did not know that. I totally forgot as well. Yeah, I totally, that's why I have you on. I'm sitting there, I'm trying to go through the stats. They're comparable, blah, blah, blah. Randy Moss, electric guys were saying, and I'm looking at Owens and I was like, just steady Eddie. Antonio Brown was a name that came up yesterday. And I said, if you don't deal with the nonsense and he's still playing, and he's averaging another 1,200 yards over 3-4 seasons, he's well over 15,000 yards for his career. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame talent. Think about that team that Pittsburgh had. Bell, Brown, and Big Ben.
Yeah, when you look at his numbers and his dominance, he's in a conversation. And then he won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady too, and it wasn't just ride along. He kind of was contributing and I think Torrey Holt got in a couple years ago, and his numbers couldn't fail to compare to some of these guys. So it's always this conversation and they're comparing one against another. But I think if you put that 10 years of greatness and, look at how many all-pro teams they made, you definitely got to put these guys in a conversation.
Do you factor 10,000, also the receptions, like 1,000 receptions? I think Hall of Fame, Torrey Holt doesn't scream a Hall of Fame, but yet, if you go back in the 80s, we would make the argument that was long overdue, Art Monk. Right. As some guys pointed out yesterday, the game is so different. It is more of a passing league to favor the quarterback, to favor the offenses. So I guess we have to take that in consideration as well.
Definitely, because you're going to see some of these guys that have good numbers. But, I call it the eyeball test, Q. You're like, no, that guy wasn't a Hall of Famer. He may have had a nice resume. Think of a Dave Craig. He was a quarterback for
put up Seattle, a lot of numbers.
Bounce around. he's got a huge amount of yards and et cetera. Even Vinny Testaverde, uh, Kerry Collins, they have big numbers, Q. But overall, you're like, no, I wouldn't put them in, And my son, he always asked me, he said, well, was Donovan McNabb a Hall of Famer? I said, he's an Eagles Hall of Famer, in my opinion, but he just falls short in terms of overall numbers against all the other quarterbacks. And of course, he doesn't have that Super Bowl win.
Well, that's it. The quarterbacks, I think, are measured not only by the stats, but championships, unless you're an exception to the rule, Dan Marino. Fouts put up yards. Dave Craig, you mentioned that. Seattle, Kansas, Steve DeBerg, they put up yards, yards, yards. When is Cunningham getting in?
That's another great one.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite player growing up in the Philadelphia area. And unfortunately, I think he's in the Hall very good, but they're not going to put him in. Maybe Veterans Committee, but his numbers just kind of pale. And you talk about in terms of, yes, he set the standard in terms of the dual threat quarterback, but do they really factor that in, that he was a game changer in that regard? Because his passing numbers are kind of down. Got hurt a couple key seasons for the Eagles that we all talk about, and he won some MVP awards, but it wasn't an AP one. So, I think in Minnesota, Gary Anderson makes that kick, and they go to the Super Bowl with him, and they probably were going to win it. It's a whole different story.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's just say, right, even if you speculate he wins a Super Bowl and he lights it up with that offense, I put up his numbers. I mean, not even 30,000 passing yards, not 207 touchdowns. He had 23, 24, 30. His monster season was 98. Remember, he didn't play in 96. He was retired. He came back to the NFL, then finished with Dallas and Baltimore. And even those years with the Eagles, 10 wins, 11-10, got hurt, 10 wins, 13 wins with the Vikings, 82, 52, and 1 as a starting quarterback.
Yeah, his playoff success is a big thing too, Q.
His what?
The playoff success. Remember that Eagles.
Oh, they're 3-6 in the playoffs.
Never won. New Orleans. They beat
never
New
won.
Orleans
Yeah, on the road.
And they lost. They lost at home to Washington. They lost to the Rams, and then we all know they lost the Fog Bowl. So unfortunately, in key moments, it just did not come together for him. And great talent. NFL Films always put him on as probably the guy that set the mold for all these quarterbacks today. But I just don't think he's going to get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's a good thing it's not a Woosah Wednesday, because I'm getting them broke right now. Phillip Rivers is getting in. But see, guys on the chat like to get at me on Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning. And their argument is if Phillip Rivers was playing in New York, he wins the Super Bowls. I say nay to that. That's not happening. Rivers gets in. Eli will get in. And we already know Roethlisberger as well. So Phillip Rivers is going to get in. And by the way, Phillip Rivers, if you really break it down, did he not play with more talented offensive weapons than a guy like Eli Manning did?
He did. You got Gates, you have LT, who's a Hall of Famer, and the thing is with him, Q, yeah, he's put up great numbers, but he never got to the big game, and I, that's a huge factor to me. So he may get in like Veterans Committee, but he's going to have to wait behind some of those other quarterbacks that you named.
Yeah, so you can't go by that 1 year in Minnesota with Cunningham. You can't. So, all right, these guys just want to break the whats on a Tuesday. Who would you guys prefer as your quarterback, Rivers or Eli? Scott says Eli should get in. Did he not play with garbage defenses that couldn't get it done? Who are we talking about? Rivers? It's a misconception with Eli. 2007, good defense, Super Bowl. 2011, their defense stunk. And you could have made a case Eli should have been MVP in 2011, but again, whatever.
And then you have in terms of, he had Say out for a little bit there, and he also had, Rodney Harrison, a borderline Hall of Famer a lot of people are looking at. So there was some talent there in San Diego, but Schottenheimer, he's not in. Marty Schottenheimer, he's one of the coaches that has a ton of wins.
But see,
he's not in either.
Too conservative. But you're right, never won the big game. But this is why I can't stand the quarterback conversation, right? The quarterback conversation, because we should not, again, peg quarterbacks with, right away we have to go. If we're going to do the argument, Super Bowl losses, or let me pull up the comment real quick. Because again, it's at sometimes I'm like, what are we doing here? No playoff success for Rivers. He stays out. He went to the playoffs. He won games and he put up numbers. So you can't fault. See, the quarterback, all we do is, because it's a quarterback, under center, touched the ball the most, franchise player, face of the franchise, we tag the wins and losses in the playoff with him. I don't think that's fair in this case. I'm actually defending Rivers in this regard. Rivers had a year with a top five D and the worst special teams known to man. I remember that. They had a bunch of muff punts and fumbles, and they lost some big games as well. They had playoff failures. They did. How old was Rodney in San Diego? Come on.
Well,
listen, they were good teams.
He was an all-pro there before he went to New England. So he was a high.
What was that? 2007? I think they were 11-5.
And then you factor in, don't forget about Sean Merriman, for a while was one of the best players in the NFL in terms of sacks and everything.
They're pushing, Lloyd, don't let them get to you. They're pushing their agenda against Eli. That's all they're doing. That's really what they're doing. They're pushing the agenda about Eli. That's it. Marty Ball was loved in Cleveland. Yeah, but Schottenheimer in Cleveland. Now, Scott's a big-time Browns fan. You go back to those 80s and those dog pound and those teams, not the cardiac kids with Brian Sipe, but you go back to those Bernie Kosar teams, right? And Ernest Biner. They had their shot. I mean, they couldn't get all the way off the field. He goes 98 yards. And then the following year, Jeremiah Castilla with the strip and the fumble. Like, imagine the narrative. Again, the narrative if we turn around and Marty wins the championship. Schottenheimer.
Yeah, it's crazy how the ball bounces and certain coaches. Look at Marv Levy. Marv Levy, Norwood makes that kick. It's a different story for him. He did get in. He won a lot of games, but people always remember those losses, Q, especially in the playoffs and the Super Bowl.
You're faulting Cunningham for no playoff success. That season, Minnesota pushes Cunningham along with his body of work in Philly. Go back and look at the friggin' stats. What are you talking about? Cunningham was a good quarterback. The Eagles fan, all they're thinking is 88 and Carl Banks tries to hit him and the rubber band man, and all of a sudden in back of the end zone, Jimmy Giles, or the punt against the Giants that is still traveling to this day. His numbers were pedestrian.
And you're talking to the ultimate Randall fan here. I watched every play of his and everything.
Yes.
And he was
as a passer, his numbers were pedestrian. But let's not think that Cunningham was that first scrambling quarterback. Joe Gilliam was a scrambling quarterback. Tarkenton was a scrambling quarterback before those guys.
Yeah, but they didn't run like he at one time.
No,
he was
I'm not saying that.
Rusher for a quarterback.
Listen, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is don't give me one friggin' season because he came out of retirement and he was throwing to Jake Reed, Randy Moss, Chris Carter. Those are pretty good weapons, were they not?
Right. And a big thing, Q, is you have to remember Doug Scoville passed away, unfortunately, his quarterback coach. He was his guru because Buddy Ryan didn't care about the offense. And he regressed underneath Rich Quinones. He got benched a couple of times in the end with the Eagles. Rodney Peete was coming in there, and they were talking about putting Jim McMahon in. So it didn't end that well for him with the Eagles when you talk about his body of work with them. And then, yes, he had that great season in Minnesota. And then he got replaced in Minnesota. I think it was Jeff George kind of came in there.
That's right.
So, great career, Hall of Very Good, great highlights and Eagles Hall of Famer. But no, I don't put him in that can.
Yeah, listen, and I like Randall Cunningham. I mean, Randall Cunningham used to destroy my Giants. I hated playing, well, not me, but when the Giants had to play those Eagles teams. I mean, I remember to this day, that Clyde 88 ruined me because in 88, the Giants had the Eagles twice beaten. They lose the first game. The second game, they go into overtime. The Giants block a friggin' field goal in the rain at the old Giants Stadium. And who picks it up and runs it in? Clyde Simmons. So both teams are 10-6. Last game of the season, what happens? The Giants play the Jets. Now remember, back then, we didn't have the option of going around the dish and the dial on NFL Network. So as a kid, what do you got to wait for? You got to wait for the cut in. You have to wait for NBC to cut in and give you the highlights. So I'm watching the friggin' Eagles against Washington getting ready to clinch the division. And all of a sudden, Ken O'Brien, Altoon, back of the end zone. Now they give you the bonus coverage. Now that's, oh my God. I mean, the bonus coverage is, as a kid, that's better than the friggin' Swigglies. You get the bonus coverage. You're watching the game, and I'm watching the Giants with a last gasp, and that's it. And then they pan back to the Eagles celebrating because they both finished 10-6, but the Eagles win the division because of what? The tiebreaker. I hated those Eagles teams because the Giants, they might have won playoff games and divisions and Super Bowls. They could not beat Buddy Ryan's teams for nothing, whether it was Pitts, Simmons, Joyner, Waters, White. It did not matter.
I know, they got the rings, though. They got the rings.
Of course.
The Eagles would always fold in the playoffs. You know, I still remember the game I was talking about against Buffalo in 1990. The Eagles beat that Giants team twice.
Yeah.
And that Giants team won the Super Bowl. So
yeah, and remember, too, the Giants that year, they started undefeated. And then they had a little bit of a lull. The team that beat them, the Eagles. And that game, and Didinger, I always argue with him. He said the Eagles blew him out. No, Ray. I love Ray Didinger. Hall of Fame. I love Hall of Fame person. But that was a 17-17 game late in the third. And then the Eagles scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth, beat them 31-17. And you're right. And then the Giants lost to the 49ers 7-3 in Monday Night Football when Sims and Ronnie Lott got into it. And then obviously Sims gets hurt. I'm at that game, the pouring rain in Buffalo. I mean, you know, it's just, listen, I know, like I said, man, those rivalries back in the day, I mean, I still remember we were having a barbecue in Mount Laurel. They opened up the season against the Eagles and Dave Meggett returns a punt. And that pretty much sealed the deal. I mean, those games, and Meggett was an Eagle killer.
Yeah, they were always close games. And you got to throw the St. Louis Cardinals in there too. The Cardinals, and when they moved to Arizona, they were in the NFC East. So those, you talk about, there was only so many games we could watch. You know, you were either watching the Eagles, Cowboys, or the Giants, or even the Cardinals. So do
you remember that, though? Watching the games as a kid on CBS, you had to wait for the score to flash to see how much friggin' time was left. It's like, how did we survive? We wanted to know. Was there 5 minutes? Was there 4 minutes? Was there 2 minutes? I mean, it drove you batty. Cunningham's not getting in, guys. If Cunningham goes in, Bledsoe does. You know, Bledsoe's kind of an interesting argument kind of case because he put up, you know, monster numbers. Now, again, what happens if Mo Lewis doesn't knock Drew Bledsoe out? Well, there's no Tom Brady for one, but his numbers, 44,000 yards, 251 TDs, 206 picks. He was a Pro Bowl quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4. Comeback Player of the Year, Associated Press, never in the MVP voting, but man, I mean.
And he took New England to the Super Bowl.
94.
Yeah, and they lost to the Green Bay Packers. So his resume is pretty good, and then he gets that ring as a backup to Tom Brady. And interesting case.
Wow, 4,500
and
yards.
And coming out of Washington State, remember, the number 1 overall pick, and everybody was like, oh, this is the guy, you know, because he looked like that statuesque quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
But just didn't kind of pan out. I would say, he's going to have to wait if he does get in, but I think he's not going to get in Hall of Fame.
I mean, you look at the quarterbacks right now. Mahomes is a lock.
Yes.
Lamar Jackson is a lock.
I would say, given his MVP awards.
Josh Allen.
He's got an MVP, probably needs a little bit more. There's one guy.
Can we say trajectory? Trending?
Yeah, I mean, he's got, I would say, it's trending that way. And there's there's some older quarterbacks I want to get your opinion on in terms of Matthew Stafford.
The numbers speak for themselves, and he won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's, you know, it's funny because I had this conversation with someone the other day regarding Matthew Stafford, just looking at his body of work. How do you not? He's going to go over 60,000 yards. You know, interesting, though. He's also 7 games under 500, but go ahead.
Right. Put up some stats with the Lions. He wins that Super Bowl. I think he gets in. But, when your win-loss record is that, people are always going to kind of question it. Another guy, Your Giants quarterback, Russell Wilson, does he get in?
I mean, I listen, he can cook and he can marinate. Russell Wilson's getting in because ultimately, when you talk about, again, the body of work, you're talking about, who was a great quarterback, right? The duration, that time. You're talking about the peak Russell Wilson. I mean, listen, and he's won a lot of games. That's the other thing. Like, throw the stats out the window. I mean, he's 50 something odd games over 500. He's thrown for 40,000 yards, 46,000 yards. Let's just say he plays a couple more years. He's going to go over 400 passing touchdowns. I mean, I don't even think there's a question, Russell Wilson. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's a championship caliber quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. And his playoff record's pretty good. I know the fans in Pittsburgh are going to say, what did he do last year? But
you're talking about a 35, 36-year-old guy. Like, not everyone's Tom Brady. Not everyone is, again, Peyton Manning. Russell Wilson, he was great in his prime. Took a lot of sacks, but he was phenomenal. And he made big plays, and they had runs. You win a Super Bowl, and you put up those types of numbers, and you're a franchise quarterback, and you're always in the MVP conversation as, 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Russ is getting in. Jared Goff, I have to see more. Jalen Hurts right now, 2 out of 3 and an MVP in the Super Bowl, and you win a championship. You look at his numbers, he's on the path.
Yeah, I guess. But I probably need to see about 4 to 5 more years of greatness from him. But winning that Super Bowl definitely validated his resume, and he's definitely on the right path. And the Eagles seem to be kind of handing the ball to him and saying, okay, let's see what you can do. Because for a long time, it was like, all right, he's running the ball. It's tush-push, all that kind of stuff.
Russell Wilson broke my heart many times, dropping dimes, untackable in the pocket. Untackable? There you go. First ballot, at one point he was getting better as his own line was getting worse. Yeah, absolutely. Jalen Hurts, yes, we just said it. De facto, welcome to the friggin' party on a Tuesday. We just said Jalen Hurts is definitely on that hall. You want to mark the tape, mark the tape. Let's not even forget all the rushing touchdowns when it's all said and done. And again, he already won. He could have won 2 Super Bowls, and he could have been MVP of 2 Super Bowls. Yes. Yes, definitely. Good start on the path. Needs a couple of big season numbers. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the other one, when you talk about Hurts running and whose record I think he broke, Cam Newton.
No.
Okay. And yeah, I would agree with you. Cam Newton. He was like a comet. You know what I mean? He had about 4 to 5 great years, went to the Super Bowl, won the MVP award, and then he just kind of fell off the cliff.
The year they went 15-1, and I go back to the crazy game against the Giants because the plays he made in that game, the Giants were down 28 and tied it up, and they lost late on a field goal. There was a 3rd and I think it was like 16, and Newton just broke the pocket. And I remember my father turned around and said to me, he just won the MVP because of that play. Like, that's how electrifying he was. But the fact that, he had a stinker in the Super Bowl. And you know what people are going to remember him for? Not falling on the ball in the fumble. I mean, that team was averaging, 28, 30-something odd points a game, and they mustered 10 against an exceptional Denver team. I mean, that's the knock on Cam Newton. I mean, he had, again, you're talking about the little body of work, the flash.
Right.
Man, I'll tell you, I think the fact is recording these shows on, do they still have Betamax?
He must have got that at a garage sale because that's
Roethlisberger definitely in. Matt Ryan. I know. I get.
Matty Ice has huge numbers too, Q, and
I know.
And he has an MVP.
I don't think of him as
if
an
they had
MVP.
held it, what was a 27-3 lead? Maybe it's different, but they didn't. But I say he's a Hall of Famer, but he's going to have to wait. He's going to probably get in after Eli and the rest of those guys we talked about.
But see, that's not fair because he didn't win anything. Like, that's my whole point. Like, now all of a sudden, if we tag these wins and losses with quarterback, how are you going to dispute a quarterback that won the Super Bowl twice and beat the Patriots twice? Like, seriously. Like, that bothers me. Matt Ryan, was 15 games over 500. Okay. Matt Ryan won 10 or more games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in his career. Eli, I think, won 10 or more 5 times in his career, maybe 6 times. I'd have to double check. And I'm not comparing the two, but I'm comparing what you're saying to make my case or my point in this argument. If Matt Ryan is a Hall of Famer, then Eli Manning and Philip. Exactly. Like Matt Ryan might be of the Joe Flacco. Is Flacco, in your estimation, a Hall of Famer?
No, he's not a Hall of Famer because it just, much like Cam Newton, he burned bright for a little bit and then it just kind of fell off. So he didn't have that 10-year period we talk about. All the other quarterbacks in that era, you were talking about them kind of before Flacco. Yes, he does have that Super Bowl victory, but, he's just bounced around, and his Ravens career did not end very well. He did have that magical season in 2023 with the Browns, but I don't think he gets in.
Multiple flukes. You guys just will never give my guy his comeuppance, his muffins, his flowers, his love, Eli Manning. But we always give Lloyd Vance some love. Monday 8 to 9, SR 102 FM The Game. That's, of course, Coastal Sports Network. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. He will pop back on later in the week with me as well as we continue the NFL talk. Excellent stuff, my friend. I like going back and forth, and I will have a collar on later in the week. I did had to ban a couple guys for a couple moments. We did not get to all their comments because you know what? At the end of the day, they're trolling me on my show and we can't allow it. But you know what? I always appreciate you chiming in for a couple moments, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right, Q. Talk to you later.
All right, there you have it. Lloyd Vance, my guy, does an exceptional job covering the NFL. Also does a great job covering college football, historian and writer as well. Got a couple comments in here. Kevin says, Q, Eli's going to get in. Be patient. It's just a matter of Wednesday. Franchise chimes in. It's not a Wednesday. It needs to be a Wednesday. Cam Newton, Fashion Hall of Fame. Take notes, Q. They fire at will on a Tuesday. They fire at will. Oh, by the way, speaking of firing at will, we check the Q. We're going to go with the Middays tonight over the O's. The Yankees start that trek against the Mariners, minus 135 on money line. And then the Dodgers have been playing the Dodgers a little bit too, minus 125. Against the Brewers. That's a Q-fecta. We'll put them out on social. Tomorrow, busy show. Costco is going to join us. We're going to try to get Larry Henry on next week, talk a little soccer, obviously with the U.S. national men's team with the, I don't even want to call it debacle against Mexico, but kind of what the future holds, head coaching, I guess you can say thoughts, shuffling of the lineups, what direction he believes they're going to go. We'll talk a little Premier League with him as well. Let me squeeze in a comment or two before we get out of here. If Eli wasn't part of NFL royalty, garbage career in the NFL. I mean, my goodness, woosah. I hate to close the show with a negative comment. It just doesn't sit well with me. We had a good show, engaged, locked in. I wore the baby blue on a Tuesday edition of Middays Q, and man decides he's going to take a shot. I mean, it's not the way you want to end the show. And we had a lot of fun, right? Had a lot of laughs, a lot of tears, a lot of comments, and this is how we're closing out the show on a Tuesday. Phillip Rivers does not win Super Bowls in New York. He just doesn't. And we'll never know. But we do know what the reality is. Eli has 2. And oh, by the way, he had to go on the road against San Francisco, drop back to pass 57 times, threw for 365, 3 touchdowns. And they beat the 49ers on the road in an NFC championship. Oh, and he won 2 games on the road in Green Bay. Beat Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Oh, by the way, he also defeated Belichick and Tom Brady, not once, but twice. 2. Give me 2, Utah. All right, got to start wrapping up. Good stuff. Good stuff from... Oh, Man wants to close it out. Go ahead. Jokey time on a Tuesday. Why do man keep throwing fake money at the... We'll call it the dancer, a.k.a. the stripper. What do you got, man? Close it out. Hurry up. We got 30 seconds. Got to get it going. Yeah, I don't know. Why did the man do it? As we start to close it out, good stuff from Steve Gardner. Good stuff. from Lloyd Vance. Not pulling the comment up on the reply, but the joke's very good. You can sit on it on the YouTube channel. Back in the saddle. Don't forget, follow me on social media, Triax57 as well, at Rich Q on Q, IG and TikTok, Rich Q on the mic, Triax57.com. And as I mentioned, good stuff from Steve Gardner, USA Today, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. All right, you goofballs, have a wonderful Sports Tuesday. Enjoy the baseball tonight. We'll dive into a little more NFL, some baseball tomorrow. Keep it locked in. Again, always on Triax57. We'll be back in the saddle tomorrow from 4 to 6 on a Wednesday, on a Woosah Wednesday edition of Middays with Q. Until then, I'm Rich Quinones. Be safe, be sound. Hasta luego, buen día.